And while that happens, I just want to share a little bit of clarity of what Brian's background has been. At 18, the year was 1989, high school dropout, founded the Rubbish Boys with $700. Took $700, bought a truck, put a lot of hard work into this, right? He led with the tagline, "We'll stash your trash in a flash." That's a hard tongue teaser to get out alone there, Brian. It was a junk calling company where he would go door to door. He would patrol alleyways for junk. I know it's been a long time probably since you've done that yourself, but fast forward, 1994, hits his first million in sales, much larger vision in mind. He makes a really hard decision. He fires his entire team to start over. Who can relate to, I feel like I should remove my team and I might be able to go faster? And who actually had the boldness to do it? We're going to time in and talk a lot about that today. From there, he starts to emerge with this new motto. It's all about people. And that's kind of the motto he drives with as he grows and scales this organization. He went on to change the name to 1800GOTJUNK in 1998, started scaling via franchise model, expanded through Canada, all throughout US, and in 2005 even went into Australia. He's had a raging success. He went on to create Wow One Day Painting and Shack Shine as successful home service brands, and that kind of created O2E Brands. And for those that don't know, O2E stands for, it's a play on taking ordinary to exceptional, and Brian is pretty exceptional. OTE is on track to hit $700 million in top line revenue this year. In 2018, he released a book called WTF, Not What You Think It Is, Willing to Fail. Within the book are some amazing stories and leadership lessons, so absolutely encourage you to go check that out if you like today's conversation. It's packed full of really good lessons. I've had a chance to read a good portion of it already and really excited to dive into some of those details. But another cool thing, Brian's got another book coming out called BYOB. Brian, I'm starting to see a theme here with your fun acronyms, but it stands for Build Your Own Business, Be Your Own Boss. It's set to publish very soon. He's been on Oprah, Ellen DeGeneres, Undercover Boss. He's been featured in every mainstream media company, runs his own podcast. I mean, the list goes on and on. He's the real deal. He's here to talk about the Cultivate community. I'll stop talking about you, Brian. Let's bring you up and let's get into the meat of it. How you doing, Brian? Can we hear your audio?
I think you can. Thank you, Casey. Quite the intro. Thank you. I'm like, oh my gosh. Big resume, but no, thanks for sharing, and happy to be here.
Well, we're so glad you chose to spend some time with you. I know you're up in the mountains with your son on spring break, there to help kind of watch one of his competitions that he's doing. So thanks for taking a break away, and hopefully that rain stops and you get some good snow up there in the mountains.
Awesome.
So, well, let's just dive right into it, Brian. Let's get into a fun story. In your book, you talk about how you made the logo 1-800-GOT-JUNK before you actually even acquired the phone number of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. You had the vision where you wanted to go. I just put myself in your shoes and thinking that's pretty bold. I would love for you to share that story with this group of like, what did you have to do to acquire 1-800-GOT-JUNK, the phone number? Because I just think that's such a fun story.
Yeah, it's a fun one. It was great. So there I was. We built about $1 million plus business. I had come up with the idea of franchising, always inspired by Ray Kroc and what he did with the McDonald's brothers business. And I thought, okay, someone has skin in the game, create a franchise, a platform that helps them build and grow. And I wanted in. And I thought with the name, the Rubbish Boys, it was, more of a British Canadian term. I was born in San Francisco and my family would often misquote the name. They'd say Rubbish Boys. And I'm like, we need something different. And so we came up with this concept of a phone number, 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And I could see it so clearly in my mind. I'm like, I'm getting that number. And I tried calling to get the number and it was not available in my area. Couldn't reach it, couldn't figure out who owned it. I went after 1-888-GOT-JUNK, which wasn't nearly as good. And the guy wanted $100,000 for it. Not a chance. Didn't have any cash close to that. So I said, okay, I got to get this and I don't know how. And after trying to hunt down at AT&T who owned the phone number and privacy laws, they couldn't share it. The next step I took, which is not an intuitive one, was I hired a design company to design the logo. And exactly as it is today, same colors, same look and feel, nothing has changed. I paid good money, a couple of grand at the time, to have the 1-800-GOT-JUNK logo designed before I got the business. For me, that was planting the seed and solidifying in my mind that I'm going to find a way to get it. And a long story short, 60 phone calls later, after 59 no's trying to get that phone number, the Department of Transportation in Idaho, who owned the phone number, said, you know what? This phone number is clearly important to you. You need it more than we do. Here you go. And the rest is history.
They gave it to you, right?
They gave it to me, didn't charge me a penny. I got in touch with the guy, Michael, in the phone room of all places. I'm like, who is in charge of the phones at Government of Transportation? And I get in touch with Michael, and he's like, okay, you've called me 3 times. Like, just get off my back. Here's the number. And a couple of days later, I called back to say thank you and say the paperwork was done. He was no longer with the company. Now, no idea what happened there, if that was a parting gift, but it was great to get that number for free. And
oh my gosh. I see everybody in the chat blowing up about the persistence is key. That's, the commitment to it. And that makes sense. But it's also you just don't know if you don't ask, right? You don't know what's possible. You don't know what's capable. So good for you. I just thought that was a really fun. I was chuckling a lot when I was reading that in your book. That's kind of the fun side. Let's go to the other side. We're going to dig into vision and leadership. We're going to talk about those two a lot today, Brian. But I mentioned this when I was introing you. This is like just a fascinating thing for me. The fact that you fired your team and started over. I mean, I can know there's a lot of owners and leaders on this call that have been like, I just don't know if I have the right people. Should I start over? But the boldness to actually go and do it. Would you mind just telling us a little bit, like, what brought you to that point, and just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I might challenge one of the pieces you said that people are saying, I just don't know if I have the right people. I bet you they know they don't have the right people.
Fair.
But I'd be willing to do anything about it. And it took guts, determination to pull it off. And it wasn't fun. I got to say, some of the darkest days I've ever been through were the days when I took my $500,000 5-truck operation, the Rubbish Boys, realized I was no longer having fun in my business, was not working with people I enjoyed. It's kind of that, would you sit down and have a beer with someone? Do you like them? Are they likable and fun and they give you the same vibe and energy? I wasn't enjoying working with these people. And it wasn't that they weren't good people. They just weren't optimists like I was. They didn't see possibility. So I ripped off the Band-Aid and I walked in one day in a morning meeting and I said, I'm sorry to do this. So I really did start with 2 sincere words. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I let you down as a leader. I didn't give you the love and support you needed to be successful. You don't believe in me. I don't believe in you. We haven't been able to make this work. And I'm going to give everyone severance and thank you and start again. And I believe that one bad apple spoils the whole bunch. I probably had 9 out of my 11 employees were bad apples and wrong attitudes. And I just decided to clean house because I had to start again. So going from 5 trucks down to just me, that was painful. Rebuilding the business. But what it taught me, and you talked about failure and how I wrote a book on it called WTF Willing to Fail.
Yep.
Failure is a gift. So the gift for me in firing my entire team was to say, Brian, as a leader, where was I falling short? And incredibly short. As a 26-year-old new leader, I was making lots of mistakes, and that's okay. But what I changed was it would then be from that day forward all about people, finding the right people and treating them right. This wasn't bums in seats and just find someone that can haul junk. This is someone that was going to give an exceptional experience to the customer. And I had to choose wisely.
I mean, again, I put myself in your shoes, and that 5 to 1 is really clear. That 5 truck down to you in a truck. And after building some success, it wasn't like you weren't seeing some level of success. It's just obvious that didn't match your goals and your vision going forward. And it wasn't the right alignment. I love that you talk also, Brian, just about like, you got to enjoy what you do. I love your hat, right? Living the dream. You got to be happy. You talk a lot about that in your book.
Can I just double down on, I saw, some people are emphasizing, Gloria and Chris saying failure is a gift. They're hearing that loud and clear. It is not just a gift. It is a necessary ingredient in success. You can't bake a chocolate cake without chocolate. You can't build a successful business without failure. So be open to making mistakes. You talked about how I was on the Ellen DeGeneres show. That was actually yesterday that it aired.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of that clip, and it gives me goosebumps that it happened. But why it was such a big win for us? 15 years of no's. No, you can't be on the show. No. So true story. They said to us, we've never in 19 years, this is their last season, had a CEO on the show. They had Bill Gates on the show, but he was no longer a CEO. He's running philanthropy. They had never had someone, but I convinced them of the story and the possibility and the reason why it needed to happen because of all the no's we got along the way. So I want everyone that's one thing that I, at 52 years of age,
too young.
Wisdom is just failure's a gift. And when it happens, you You're just like hands up, like you're on a roller coaster going, bring it on. What am I going to learn? And this will make me better if I'm willing to unwrap that gift.
Well, Brian, there's so many people, and I've even been guilty of this. I know so many people can feel the same way. It's you want it to be perfect. You want to know you're going to succeed, so you don't take that risk. You don't take that shot. You don't, take that effort. It even just, nobody hears. Everybody thinks it's wow. They got on the Ellen DeGeneres show. It was probably, I guess you've built it that way. They don't hear about the 15 no's you had to go through and the push you had to do to overcome to get to that level of success. And I think it's just a great reminder for so many leaders and owners in the call. So thanks for doubling down and sharing that.
Thank you.
So vision, right? Like you're a visionary, Brian. Like every time I talk with you, I'm always like, all right, I feel it, I hear it. When I watch your videos, your TED Talks, everything else, I can always see that come through. And I think it's a big discussion in a world. You've got all these entrepreneurs and leaders that are, kind of getting off the ground, seeing some success, working for double-digit revenue growth, profit growth, really trying to push the limits and figure out how to get to their vision and their scale. And I'm just curious to slow it down, right? Like, what level or what detail does your vision have to be? Take us back to when you were, $1 million, $2 million in size, 20, 30 employees, whatever that was, before the franchising days, before the big, huge scale, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much were you driving vision then? How much, how clear was it that you would go off and build what you've built?
Yeah. So we'll go back to a relevant, timely example of Ellen again. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm gonna take that as an example that we can break down into chunks of how vision works for me and how I've always been driving vision. So for me, it's what's the idea? And it isn't something that we want to be able to brag about. Let's get on Ellen. But why is that important? Because it helps to spread the impact and the love of what we're doing with our people, our team, growing businesses. So I took the painted picture. We've got this vision process where I sat down when I was in a doom loop, where I felt like my business wasn't growing, where I felt like I wasn't a great entrepreneur and young and learning. And I created at $1 million in business, I created this painted picture, a 1-page double-sided document of what our future would look like. We'd be top 30 metros in North America. We'd be the FedEx of junk removal. We'd be on the Oprah Winfrey show. I listed all these crazy things that would happen. A painted picture years later in the early 2000s, after doing Oprah and a bunch of big things, we said, what's next? We said, we're going to be on Ellen. Like, we're going to be dancing on Ellen. We're going to be on this show. I'm going to be on stage sharing what we're doing about our brands. The painted picture comes and goes. 5 years later, we don't get it done. But someone in our marketing department years later, last year to be specific, said, how come we never made that happen? And I said, just didn't happen. We had other priorities. She took it on herself to make it happen, made 3 pitches. It happened to have been that there was a junk job that we did in Los Angeles where they had wowed one of the producers. So the pitch came in after this person as a producer was a customer that said, you guys are unbelievable. And it can seem like serendipity, but it's connecting the dots. It's all these little things coming together. So the Ellen thing was a team effort of go, 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 go towards this goal, get a lot of no's. When we were there in the fall, they featured 1800GOTJUNK and did a little skit where they cleaned out Andy's junk. It didn't fit the painted picture vision. I wasn't on stage dancing, everything I saw in my head. And not to make it about me, but as the representative of the brand and what we were building and this Can You Imagine movement, I needed it to be complete. So after the Ellen show happened, we talked to Ellen. I shared my story. I told her how she was in the book and I wrote that we'd be here, but that my vision was me being in that chair, me sharing the Can You Imagine movement. And because it wasn't exactly where we needed it to be, I said, would you ever have us back? And Ellen aligned. And after begging and pleading and twisting rubber arms, we got back. So I share that as the power of vision is the visionary. All of you as entrepreneurs, take your idea, put it in writing, share it with your people, then find the right people every step of the way to help make magic happen. I didn't make Ellen happen. I didn't make Oprah happen, but I had a seedling of an idea. And as a visionary entrepreneur, after a long story that you'd asked a question, I'm trying to sort of bring it back to your job as a visionary, as a leader, is to plant a seed in your mind, in everyone else's minds, and off you grow.
I love that story, Brian, and thanks for connecting it to something so recent. What I think a lot about though is what you said is communicating it, but I also heard write it down, document it, get it in front of people, let people know what's going to happen. And it's not just what I really appreciate too is a lot of your vision items that were there, they weren't just data or numbers, right? It was experiences, it was accomplishments. It was almost like the brand getting to a certain level, and that probably really inspired and got your team, corralled behind you to go fight to achieve those objectives, which I think is just fantastic. So thank you so much for sharing that. Anything else that comes to mind that you could tell these entrepreneurs, like, this is how you should approach a vision right now?
Yeah, there's an article I wrote. If you Google Brian Scudamore painted picture, you'll probably find it. I think it was Inc. magazine. And this whole process of vision, this is not something that I created. Successful people in every walk of life, athletics, religion, um, movies, whatever you do for a living, and you have a vision for yourself, it's taking that vision and putting it down in writing and sharing it with those around you. Why? Because you can't do it alone. One of my favorite hats I have that I'm not wearing today is bigger and better together. I'm building something with great people. We are building something bigger and better together. I wouldn't have chosen to do it alone, nor could I ever do it alone. High school dropout, college dropout, I can't do it. I need the help of great people. So I've got to share the vision with others. So I created something called a painted picture process, which again, it talks about in that article. I sat down at my parents' dock and I just took out a sheet of paper. This is back in 97, 98. And I wrote one page, double-sided. We will be in the top 30 metros in North America. We were only in one. We will be the FedEx of junk removal, clean, shiny trucks. We will be on the Oprah Winfrey show. I used very intentional language. I didn't do it intentionally. I wasn't that smart, but it came out that way. We will be, not hope to be, want to be, will try to be. We will be. So when someone reads your painted picture years later and goes, how come the Ellen thing didn't happen? You said it would. I know, I still see it happening. Someone else takes it and runs with it. So the visionary process of taking your ideas and putting it in writing, it's about sharing it with others. Too often, the biggest mistake I've ever seen any entrepreneur make over and over and over, as a commonality, this is a very general statement, but it's my experience. They don't take their ideas from their brain and try and distill them down into simple ideas to share with others. The entrepreneurs goes, I got all these big ideas. I'm thinking big. Well, tell me what does big mean? Let me build something big with you. Very passionate about the process, but it's funny because you can take something. So here's another example. We had this Can You Imagine wall in our office, and the deal was to get something up there big, like Oprah or whatever it might be. To put this permanent decal up there, you had to have your name below it, and I had to sign off on it saying, yeah, like that fits our values and so on. So a woman, Andrea, in our company comes up and she goes, I see us on the side of these Starbucks cups. They used to have these poems and quotes and things from famous people and authors. And she goes, I can see us being on the side of one of these cups. And I'm like, what? On like a $7 latte, a quote from us? Who are you kidding? And I kind of shot her down, which was a terrible leadership move. She's like, Brian, you tell us to envision big things. I can see it. And when Andrea said to me, I can see it, I said, okay, let's put it up there, your name below it. She got us on 10 million cups across the United States and Canada with a quote that I didn't write because I'm not smart enough. Starbucks helped write, but it was something about, you are what you can't let go of. Brian Scudamore, founder and CEO of 1800GOTJUNK. Now that was important because that was a win, showing again, crazy ideas. If you believe they might just happen, but envision them and get your team to envision really big things.
I think that's so crucial, that collaboration of vision and how to get your team, not just your leadership team, but all employees or all team members within the organization to buy in, right? That's a phenomenal tactic of Can You Imagine wall, driving that. Any other tactics come to mind of how do you create the collaboration of vision before we move into the leadership world?
Yeah, so I saw someone put in a comment that Cameron Held wrote a book called Vivid Vision. Now, Cameron's one of my closest friends. And it's funny because Cameron was our COO at 1800GOTJUNK. It's ironic that and I love it, that he's written a very impactful book. And yes, I highly recommend it. He came in and he goes, I can't envision anything, Brian. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, I'm your COO. I know how to execute. You envision, I execute. He gets it now because he's written a book on it. And here was the difference. We sat down once and I said, Cameron, I'll show you that you can envision something. And you can do this with your people who say that they can't envision the future. If I asked you, Casey, where would you go on a trip if money wasn't an object tomorrow? Where would you go? And you might list, Cameron did this and he listed some hot place. I think it was Cuba. What are you drinking? Who are you with? Describe the sound of the waves. Describe the beach. Describe what it feels like to be there. How hot is it? And he fully described his ideal trip with his girlfriend, the whole bit. I'm like, you can envision the future. You just showed me you can. And so it's getting people, the entrepreneur, to first envision what you see, because leadership does not happen without followers. You then have the right people who are following, who are joining in on the journey. They need to have their own vision for their own department, for their own product, for whatever part that they control in your business. Make sure that they just light it up and that they see a really amazing future that fits with yours.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for slowing down. I think I speak on behalf of everyone, and they can jump in chat and tell you, but I think I speak on behalf of everyone of that vision is such a crucial part of creating the growth and getting the long-term objective. And it's not just your vision. I think that's what's so crucial. You're just the one that has to start it. And when you do that and you bring that to your team, you open up a lot of opportunities. And Brian, your brand is so well known from all the radio. I hear your radio ads constantly. Of course, I'm in the Chicago market, so maybe that's just a specific market thing, but we've seen you all over the place. Congratulations on that. I want to get into leadership. I want to really get to the root of this. And I know a lot of people are thinking about this in terms of leadership. A lot of people are in our world are especially in the service industry, which I know you're a part of here. The labor shortage. Is this affecting you guys at all? Are your franchisees experiencing any issues with the labor shortage right now?
Of course, absolutely. But I'd say maybe less so than some other companies I hear from. And the reason why is I think because of how we are learning to find the right people and treat them right. Yesterday when I was on the Ellen show again, and I obviously I'm so excited about it, so it keeps coming up. But Darrell, who is the person I was sitting with, I said, we're doing a Can You Imagine wall for your school in Washington, D.C. to help your students envision a brighter future for them. That's what we do in our companies. We want to take our people and say, what matters to you? How can this business and what we're doing help you achieve that outcome? Maybe it's to one day build your own business, and maybe it's not to own a Wow One Day Painting franchise or a Shack Shine franchise, any one of ours, but to go out on your own. That's awesome. Let's help you get there. Let's let this be a stepping stone towards your future growth. Yeah. But if you don't ask your people what matters to them, if you don't ask them what can they imagine, how can you ever help them? And so the magic, I think, is in connecting those two. Your people know that you care. You ask to find out what caring is, and you go out and you help them achieve greatness. And so that breeds tremendous loyalty, and that becomes a big magnet where people say, I want to join you. I am attracted to you. Doesn't matter what the money is, doesn't matter what else is going on. I want to learn from you guys. I want to grow with you people. And they really add to what we're building. So yes, Casey, it's a challenge. The world has changed, but it's not near the challenge for us that I think it is for other entrepreneurs in other businesses that I know.
I think that's really straightforward and tactical, right? I find people feel this shortage more so when they either can't find candidates, or more often they're losing people. With the Great Resignation, people are departing, and it's the reactive approach. What I love is that your tactic is it's actually all about that first interaction to go, what, and just back to vision. What's your vision? What do you think is possible? What are you wanting to do? How is this going to help you get there so we all win? So thanks for slowing that down.
And the Great Resignation, we internally, we said, you know what? We're not going to accept that. It's the great progression. Don't resign. Tell us where you want to progress, and let's first see if we can help you. Now, if progression is all about money, if progression is about status and title, if it's about learning and whatever it is, tell us, and let's help you before you leave.
Yeah, and good for you, Brian.
It's been tremendous.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk. I mentioned this motto, right? It's all about people. Make that tangible for us. You came out with this motto. I know I've read a lot about your culture and everything you've built. Help us understand, like, what's the philosophy? What can we bolt onto and maybe bring into all of our businesses around this theme of it's all about people?
Yeah. So what it means to me is a company of a gathering of incredible women and men working towards a common goal. And so if you don't have a winning team, people that want to win, that see what you see, you've got the wrong people for you. They can be amazing people. But when I did my painted picture back in 97, 98, and I share it with everybody, About half my team said, Brian, you're smoking some hope dope. You're not going to get on Oprah. You're not going to be in 30 metros. Like, what are you talking about? And they left. And that was okay. They didn't see what I wanted to see. They weren't followers of my leadership. Totally okay. Amazing people. But the people who stayed said, Brian, this is compelling. I get it. I want to be a part of it. So for me, it's finding the right people who see what you see, and treating them right means put them ahead of everything else. So you often hear people say, Casey, the customer is always right. The customer is king and queen. I don't agree. The king and the queens in this situation are your people before customer. So our theory, our strategic model of growth is find the right people and treat them right. If you take care of your people, they will take care of the customer. If you take care of your customer, they will take care of the growth of your brand, your profits, your reputation, and it works. When you see someone, so one of the brands I've always loved is Starbucks. I love my coffee. I drink more than anyone probably should. But when I show up to a Starbucks, they're always friendly. And they're just like, they treat you like a human being. And they remember your name if you've been in there, whatever it is. But there's a connection. It's because their leaders care about them and the company cares about them. And so how do you show up as a business and care about your people? Ask them what matters to them, which we talked about, and have fun with them. Give them the respect. When COVID hit, which was a nightmare for all of us, I'm sure, we had to lay off a lot of people. We were at about a $500 million run rate, 450 million, and we thought we might cut that in half. And we laid off some people, but I called every one of those people. I connected with them and said, I'm sorry. We did a bunch of little humanistic things to say, like, this isn't what anyone had planned. And it was amazing because all but one actually came back when the time to invite them back was appropriate. So it's just being human, being real. How would you treat a friend if they worked with you?
Yeah.
Well, that person, even as a new employee, should be a family member, a friend, and show them you care because they're there and will be there longer if you treat them that way than if it's just a job, just an employee.
You didn't give a grounded tactic because the tactic is be a human, right? Treat them as a human, respect them at the same level. You talk as if there's no hierarchy in your organization. I'm sure there is, but it's a very shallow hierarchy, right? Where people are naturally all have a say and you care about what those individuals say. And that's how you lead everybody to the vision that's established.
Yeah, David Harden shared the tactic: treat the janitor with the same respect as the CEO. And that matters. It's such an easy thing just to get out there and just treat everybody the same and go, you know what, that person's struggling. They're trying to make a payday, whatever it is. They've got goals and dreams. Ask people. Ask the janitor what their dreams are.
Yeah.
Don't just ask the CEO because you look up to them.
I love that. And, I think about people, but let's go more specifically to leadership, right? I think a lot about your scale, Brian, from, building up your own engine, million, 2 million in size, then franchising it, then even starting new brands that have, been wildly successful. You've obviously got a knack for this, but I know you didn't get there without some of the leaders to help you obviously make that happen. And I think what a lot of owners in our community, and I know, even myself, I pay attention to a lot is, how do you pass the trust or the responsibility through the additional layers of leadership that get established? And I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs we have the luxury of partnering with where it's a big hurdle to kind of get past them into that next, tier of leadership that has to be established to help, sustain the growth. What are your thoughts around that? What have you done in your business to be so successful through those different growing pains of bringing in additional leaders?
Yeah, and I know you want tangibles, and this is a simple idea, but it's harder to apply. So to me, the simple side of it, again, if you find the right people at every single level, you've got to remember that as you grow and scale, those people will one day, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, bring in more people. So it starts at the very top. As the founder, the CEO, if you don't treat your team exceptionally well, with love, kindness, respect, everything they deserve, that will trickle down in the way that you put it out. And so the only way I think to scale through people is to find out, do you really have amazing people at every single level? Are they giving the same kindness and love? So again, going to go back to an Ellen example here because I thought this was important. The first time I went out there and I met the Ellen team, they had recently come off of this whole Ellen's environment is toxic, the whole everything you heard. So I go and I'm very curious and I meet people and I met 20 people at the Ellen show. I'm like, that's not my impression. They just seem like wonderful people. And literally, we talked about janitors. The person cleaning up after the crowd with garbage bags was like, oh, hi, how are you? Did you guys enjoy your visit? Like nice, warm, loving people. I'm like, that does not flow down from the top in a toxic environment. And so I got to dig a little bit at dinner with a couple of their producers. And they said, listen, there were a couple of bad apples who didn't like to work hard. And that happens. But this is a culture of generosity. That was the word I heard. And so when I met Ellen a bunch of times, and this next time, I mean, she's one of the most generous, loving, kind people I've ever met. So again, preserve what you've got with your values and live them each and every day. So what we did is we took our values years and years ago. This is tangible. I said, there's 8 of us, leadership team retreat back in the 90s. We were at a small cabin by the water. I said, Jim Collins, Good to Great book.
Oh, yeah.
He said, we need to have values. He says, organized crime has values. Doesn't mean they're the right ones. We need to have them clearly defined. What are they?
Sure.
I said, I don't know what our values are. So I gave everyone pads of Post-it notes. I said, write down every word that describes who we are today, not who we want to be, who we are today. We took these Post-it notes, 400 of them, put them up on these windows in the cabin. We started to organize them. And they almost all fit into 4 categories. There were patterns. And for our values were passion, integrity, professionalism, and empathy. Pipe. We said we will forever hire based on pipe, fire based on pipe, develop based on pipe. And it's stuck. And we've never changed our values, not once, and we never will. So people will even, and this is how it works, Casey, proof that it works is people will come to me and say, Brian, I don't think you had passion in that meeting. Or I think that decision that you made where you got rid of a bunch of people, you didn't practice empathy. And they will call me on it as a leader. And I'll say, wow, that's interesting. Let's talk about that. And so it holds ourselves accountable. And you'll see employees in the company say that wasn't pipe to someone else. But it allows us to come together and say, you're right. Let's learn, how do we get better? We know what our values are. So a challenge is anyone who doesn't have values in their company, doesn't know what they are, do that Post-it note exercise and really figure out who you are today. Our values aren't right for you. You have your own values. You're a different human being. What are your values, and live them each and every day in your company.
I love how simple you make it. Also, I found a pattern here, Brian. You seem to really love acronyms.
Love them. So, I mean, for a new employee at O2E, it drives people nuts. They're like, BBT, bigger and better together, WTF, willing to fail. Like, there's so many of them that you lose track.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. And I think why we like them is it gets someone to go, what is that?
Yeah.
And they ask the question, and then we tell the story behind it. So every meeting room in our office is an acronym with a story.
So Brian, you and Cameron, you mentioned Cameron, your COO that you had for a long time. And I come from a similar background as Cameron. And, the two of you, did some amazing things. And I don't know if it was you or Cameron, it doesn't matter, but you all implemented a huddle, like a daily huddle as a leadership tactic that helped drive and organize the business. Could you speak to that? I think that's just a phenomenal tactic that a lot of owners would love to implement depending on their business.
Yeah, that came from Vern Harnish. And by the way, I mean, Cameron and I would both say this to you, that there's no original ideas. What we did, what I did after Cameron, like we're taking our own take on something else. So huddle was created in football or maybe somewhere else prior. Vern Harnish, Gazelles, said, listen, you need to have a daily meeting calling the play for the day. Bring everyone together. And it's a 7-minute stand-up huddle. It's now sit down because we all do it over Zoom, but it's actually incredible to have hundreds of people come every single day. And good news, key metrics. There's a video actually on YouTube. If you search O2E Brands huddle, you'll see a bit of a format of it. But it keeps us together. I equate it to sort of the family dinner. And I get that, nobody necessarily lives this perfectly traditional box anymore of the 6 p.m. sit down, mom and dad and kids and the whole bit. But it's that, how was your day? What went well? What needs to be improved? And coming together. And so as a company, we pulse together every single day to review our numbers, see how we're doing, and to really connect with missing systems, opportunities, things we need to improve.
Yeah.
And it's not just a rah. Sometimes it's like, why are we off our numbers right now? What's going on? But it's connecting, and it's incredible.
It's family
And
dinner, family breakfast.
yeah. And when Vern, so I did this program at MIT called Birthing of Giants, which Vern hosted. And I remember when he shared this concept, I am doing a daily huddle. And it took me about, this is again, a leadership example of leadership can be tough. For the first maybe 6 weeks, people in my company fought me on this. Brian, this is stupid. Like, we're standing up and we're doing this like talk around, who's got good news, and but it found its life and energy. And it ends in a cheer every day, depending on what the word is of the day, where someone's just like, oh, we were just like, something really exciting happened, and you cheer for it.
Yeah.
People love it, and they wouldn't miss it for the world. And so what are you doing as a company to pulse faster, to make sure everyone's on the same page? When we implemented Huddle, it got rid of so much email. It got rid of so many, this was, 15, 20 years ago, and it got people going, oh, I didn't know about that. I didn't know about this. And it just really connected us. That's the key.
Well, as we've gone more remote, right? A lot of companies here have gone more remote. Their leaders have gone more remote with their teams, and as that's happened, this kind of progressive world that's taking place, it's actually almost in a way gotten harder to communicate. Although we have so many different new ways to communicate via technology, so it's just interesting to go back to something so simple. So thanks for sharing that. I feel like that drives a little bit of your culture, right? Something like that really helps enhance it. You're known, and 1-800-GOT-JUNK, if you do any reading, any research on you in the organization, you're known for having a fun, really exciting culture, but also, a culture of performance. I'm just curious, does anything come to mind that you could share some advice if folks are trying to get their teams really rallied and create that culture? You've given some really good advice today of, making sure you have the painted picture, make sure you know what their vision is, make sure you know what's important to them. Can they imagine? You've talked about now the huddle, but is there any other ideas that are coming to mind that people could, as you said, essentially rob and duplicate, right? R&D and make it their own. What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, no, a great one. So a couple of things on Huddle, and I'll maybe, I get very ADD, and I don't want to let this thought go. So I'm going to talk about this one squirrel for a second related to Huddle, and then I'm going to come back to your question. So Huddle, we've got a culture that's stand up, vibrant, rah, like just a lot of fun and energy, as you mentioned. I was worried when the pandemic hit and we talked about doing Huddle online. I'm like, this is never going to fly. Like, it's going to last a couple of weeks and then it's just going to die. And it did not. It thrived. And to the point where even as we are back to office in many ways, in many places, people still do it online. And it instead of show up to this big huddle room we had in the office. And here's the reason why. And I was totally wrong. I thought it's going to lose its energy. It's on a Zoom screen. It's just not the same. At our huddle room, where you'd have 300 people all clapping, a lot of times it's hard to hear things. The introverts are at the back. They can't see. The extroverts who are speaking up, you've got to be confident to be able to raise your hand and ask a question. You're only seeing people's backs because someone's on stage and you take turns, but it's a different experience. So Huddle became, for us on an online world, smiley faces versus unfriendly backs. It became introverts lighting up the chat, asking questions. It became so much more engaging. It was mind-blowing. And we actually had to work hard to keep it to the 7 minutes versus letting it really grow. It's way better now. So that was my squirrel moment.
All right, fair enough.
My question, going back to what else have you learned about performance management and things related to Huddle? So James Alish, who runs our, he's managing director of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, used to run our Wow One Day painting business, loves numbers, grew up in a similar format to you and loves his numbers. And he said, listen, Brian, this is a few weeks ago. He came to myself and our president and said, there's so much cheering. There's so much rah that everyone's just passionately excited about what's going on. He goes, have you not seen that our 1-800-GOT-JUNK numbers in January, we were below goal quite substantially, but people are still, yeah, woo. And it's like, we need to call that out. Now, we had the Omicron. There was all sorts of things going on, which were probably the real justification as to why.
Sure.
He said, we can't just let it slide. We have to talk about it. And so what he and some others created was a Fireside Fridays. After Huddle, an extra 15 minutes for those who want to be there. to ask questions and to dive in and say, well, why are we below 6% there? Why are we missing that? Why did this happen? Ask questions of the leadership team and others involved. And it's a smaller format. And again, someone shows up because they want to be there, they want to hear, or they want to ask question and engage. And it's been really, really good.
We have too long of meetings at Cultivate. That's all I keep hearing. Too long of meetings over here. We're going to shorten all of our meetings, team members. If you can do that in 7 and 15 minutes, we don't need to have as long of a meeting. I see a lot of people throwing the smiley faces up in excitement around that.
So I get a couple of ex-EOers, YEO, Young Entrepreneur Organization, reaching out, and they wanted to talk PR. And they said, hey, listen, we're EO members. Can we pick your brains on how to get free press? And I said, of course. And I booked a 10-minute call with them. Yeah. And one of them took offense. And he's like, dude, I'm an EOer. Like, can't we at least chat for an hour? And I said, if I can't teach you and give you everything I know on PR in 10 minutes, something's wrong. I don't want to overcomplicate it. That's it. If we need more time, happy to do it. So we finished the call like 8 minutes. And he's like, dude, you figured this out. And I'm like, yeah. So why would I extend more time? I know we're all busy. I respect yours, respect mine. This isn't trying to be like, I'm so busy. This is just trying to help more people. And he's like, wow, it is really that simple. So my point there is, I think we do. I'm sure we'd all nod to this. We overcomplicate, and meetings fill the times we often allocate. Yeah. So at O2E, we do 25-minute meetings instead of half an hour. We do 50-minute meetings instead of an hour. You're not allowed to book an hour. And so it just helps give people a little bit of space between meetings. And we challenge ourselves. If we go, do we really need 90 minutes, or can we do this in 45? And it helps.
It's a simple little takeaway that I hope a lot of people are grabbing, but it's definitely one I'll take away. I want to move to mindset. I've got one question on mindset, and then we're going to jump to Q&A. I see a bunch of amazing questions already thrown in there, but if you have a question you'd like to get asked, go ahead and throw it in there. It might get selected. And everybody go jump to that Q&A and start voting up your favorites, because whichever the few favorites are the ones I'm going to ask. As we get into the mindset piece, I know something that I think about a lot, and I've heard it from a lot of our owners and advisors. And we had several people actually bring this question to me when I went out to the community, Brian. So I know this is of an interest. How fast should I grow? How do I know that I know I'm ready? How did you know that you were ready to go into franchising, to go into Australia, to start two new brands? How did you know, and what was the risk versus return calculation or evaluation that went through your mind? Speak to that for us, because I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, and we get stuck and we don't scale maybe to the level we wanted to because we're afraid of that risk.
Yeah. So as I hit $1 million in revenue, and it took me 8 years to get to $1 million in revenue with Rubbish Boys, I was feeling like I was in this doom loop of, look at all the people in EO, because it afforded me at $1 million to be able to join the Entrepreneur Association. Yep. And I saw these other people with bigger, more glamorous, sexier businesses. And I'm just like, oh man, I got this little $1 million business, and some people have 10 or 100 million. I'm not growing quickly enough. Many of those people I know didn't survive in their businesses years later. But I did, and we caught up and then overtook them. Not in a competitive way. I don't mean that. But what I mean is a more sustainable way. So in the same way that it takes longer to find the right people and to really get that right, it takes longer to grow a business the right way. It took me 8 years to franchise my business, or 10 years rather, to franchise my business. I franchise, and then Paul Guy, the very first franchise owner, does $1 million in revenue in his first full calendar year. It took me 8 years. He does it in a year, because we had some systems, we had some proof, it wasn't that he was better. It was just, we had now a formula. And so take the time up front to create the formula. And I remember reading about Walmart. I think that it took them 25 years to get to 7 locations, and how many hundreds of thousands of, these things take time. Someone once said these overnight success stories sure take a long time. It's been 33 years for me. And I love every minute of it, but grow as quickly as you feel can be sustainable, I think. Now, I'm a big believer in, let's build this rocket ship while we're flying it. Yeah. You're flying towards Mars, and you're getting out of the rocket,
strapping it in. Oh yeah.
Around, and that's okay. But don't overextend yourself to the point that the rocket crashes and burns and you never make it to Mars.
Sure. No, it's really good advice, and I think it actually just ties into the first Q&A that's at the very top. They say, how do you evaluate smart risk versus reckless risk? Because what they're thinking about is like, all right, you're telling us to fail, Brian. Okay, got it. Well, how do you decide what's worth failing on? How do you decide? How do you personally evaluate when you make a decision? Can you speak to any of that?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with what matters to you most in life. So Brian Scudamore, at 18 years old, putting $700 into a beat up old pickup truck,
Yeah.
I could afford to lose that $1,000, my life investment.
Yep.
It's okay. Now, would I take a $700 million business today and go put it all on black and risk it? Of course not. I got 3 kids, I got a family. So it's trying to figure out where you are on the spectrum and why would you risk something? What is on the other side? What's the bigger why that you're trying to accomplish? And so, you take FedEx, Fred Smith, true
Yeah.
story. He put his money on pay on black or red or whatever it was
All of
to
it.
make payroll.
Yeah.
Like, yes, he got lucky. That's all he did was get lucky. That was not a smart move necessarily. In hindsight, you could say it saved the business. Yes. It's what's the risk and what is the payoff by taking that risk. Now, we also need to know that nothing ever goes as planned. Steve Jobs talks about connecting the dots. You can't connect the dots in the future. You can only connect the dots from the past. All your lessons, all your failures, all your accomplishments, you can connect them together to help shape the future.
Mhm.
But nobody can predict the future. You can do what I do and Cameron does and coming up with a painted picture or a vivid vision, same thing, and just go, here's what I see. And the power in a vision, I believe, is you never ask yourself, how do I get there? You write down the vision, you share it with others, and you say, we're going to be on Ellen, we're going to be on Oprah, we're going to be top 30 metros, we're going to have these 3 incredible world-class brands, whatever it looks, feels, and acts like. But then don't sit there and ask yourself how, because what happens if you ask yourself how? You start to go, oh, but I don't have the money, don't have this, don't have that. I mean, look at the biggest, brightest visionaries in the world, like Elon Musk,
Yeah.
as an example. I mean, how many people in the world told him he was crazy? And maybe he is, but he's made magic happen by dreaming up some really big, big stuff. Yes, it's taken longer than imagined, but did he take risks? He saw them all happening.
Yeah.
He put it out there to the universe to have others rally around him to help make him happen. So, anyways, all over the place, ADD, but it's
You're all right.
vision is powerful, and but it's not easy. You can't actually go, I'm going to make that happen by a certain date and just will it. But you've got to be prepared that things can shift and change and adapt accordingly.
It's a good reminder, though. Again, it connects back to that vision. It's a really great segue for us to go back to the vision you had. And the next question is, you decided to scale your business by franchising. I know, we have some owners here on the call that are probably thinking about potentially franchising their business, and they see that as a growth mechanism. You know, when do you think is the right time to think about it? How important is it to master the first business unit before starting to sell franchises? Can you speak to that for just a couple minutes for us?
Yeah, when people call me up and say, like, tell me everything about franchising, how do I know
Yeah.
when I'm ready? One of the things I would say is I would wait 5 years minimum, maybe 10.
Mm.
And if people can't wrap their head around that, they're not in for the long game of franchising. With our businesses, Shack Shine, Wow One Day Painting, 1800GOTJUNK, none of them made any money until we at least had 50 franchises. And then it
Yeah,
was like
it's a big barrier.
scraping by. You're playing the long game.
Oh yeah.
And so it is a difficult, challenging thing because if you get the wrong employees, you can get, as we talked about, we can get rid of them. If you get the wrong franchise owners, not easy at all. You've got franchise agreements, investment of time and money, potential lawsuits, all sorts of stuff to deal with. You really got to get it right. So franchising is difficult. Now, I love franchising, but why did I choose it? Might be the best question. I loved what Ray Kroc's model was,
Right.
to take people who have skin in the game and help them build a bigger, brighter future for themselves and to build a brand together. I'm a social guy. Yes, I'm a big introvert as well. I've got a good balance, but I don't like doing things alone. And I've always known I'm not the smartest person in the room. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm nowhere close to it. And I've been able to put that ego aside. I mean, failing out of high school, Like, I've gone to 14 schools from high school to college. The only graduation I've ever had is kindergarten. True story.
Yeah.
And I don't share that to be funny, but more the reality of, like, I am not the smartest person in the room. And some people can go, well, Brian, look what you built. Look what we've built. I get to plant seeds of ideas, get people excited, and bring the right people in. But the effort and the energy that these people are putting in to make things happen, it's a team. And teams make mistakes, and stuff goes wrong. I mean, even like, take for example, you and I know that this event almost didn't happen out of miscommunication on our part. That
Yeah.
I had an assistant on mat leave, and my other assistant comes in and thought, oh, Brian's on spring break, delete. And it was like,
Delete.
oh, hold on, we committed.
Yeah,
To this.
nobody knows you canceled a week ago. Nobody
Yeah.
knows that. That was
Yeah,
kept
nobody
quiet.
knows. Canceled a week ago, but I'm back. And I wouldn't let anyone down. And that's not our values, as you mentioned, and no. But it is, things happen. But you trust building and scaling and having the right team, and taking your time to really, really, really get it right.
I
You
love
can't
that.
scale without a team, and you can't scale without allowing your team to make some mistakes. And the bad ones will bubble up, and you'll hear about them and get to fix them, right?
Yeah. I want to bring one final question, and I actually want to read a small excerpt from your book. But just at a high level, you talk about failure in this book. I think this is a fun way to end the conversation today. What is the biggest failure you've overcome? You mentioned a lot of them in the book. You're very open book. Thanks for sharing everything you have today. But what is the one failure you really look back and go, that was the most important learning lesson for me going through that experience?
Yeah. So it's going to be a repeat of one we've talked about. I've made so
Okay.
many mistakes in the whole book, in WTF. Actually, quick story. WTF, how we came up with the title. So Roy H. Williams, who does all our radio creative, he's my co-author, and we wrote this book together. He convinced me to write the book after 8 years of me saying, no, my ego doesn't need a book. And he said, this isn't about you. This is about the others, that you can actually share your impactful stories of what you guys have built together. So I said, I'm a branding guy. What's the title? He goes, no, that's not how it works. You write the book, then the title comes out. And I disagreed. And he goes, Brian, I've written more books than a lot of people. And oh, something just popped up on my screen. And I said, okay, we wrote the manuscript. And at the end, it was a little success, failure, lots of failures. And I'm like, man, this is unbelievable how often I have failed. And the title did jump out, like Roy suggested, like WTF, willing to fail. So the biggest mistake, it's hard to quantify because they were all big. But I think
Sure.
one of the biggest earlier mistakes was it's all about people. Finding the wrong people, understanding my leadership of how to treat the right people and who the right people were. If I didn't get that right at firing 11 people and starting a blank sheet again, imagine today we've got 5,000-6,000 people across our brands.
Yeah.
Wouldn't want to let go that many people, right? I mean, you're
Sure.
gone, you're toast. It was really hard. It was a lesson I needed to learn, but it helped me as a leader reflect and look inwards and say, what did I do wrong? A lot of leaders would say, oh, I just had bad people. They're all jerks. No, they were all decent people. I just didn't find the right people.
What was your
for
contribution?
Me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was all my contribution. It was my leadership. I didn't have followers because, yeah.
I'm glad you shared that. I wanted to read this expert as we wrap up here. So hold tight. You share this at the very end of your book, Brian. So a little teaser for everybody. And you start off to say, these are the 10 things after reading my book, I hope you'll remember. And are you okay, Brian, if I share these 10 things with everybody?
Yeah, please. Yeah, as long as you're not asking me to recite them, because I don't.
I'll read them. I've got it written down here, right here. Number 1, failure is the key that unlocks the door to true success. Its value is that it teaches you what you need to know. Never be afraid to try, fail, and learn. Number 2, failure is a temporary condition. Interestingly, so is success. Number 3, the only way to reduce the number of failures you must endure is to embrace a worthy mentor who will let you learn from his or her failures. 4, keep in mind that after you've chosen your worthy mentor, your mentor must also choose you. 5, surround yourself with passionate people who think and act like founders. 6, if every person in your organization leads people smaller than themselves, you will become a company of tiny people. Contra that, if every person in your organization leads people greater than themselves, you will become a company of giants. Number 8, choose your heroes wisely. In the end, they define you. Number 9, true happiness is to enjoy the present without fear about the future. And number 10, sorry, BWTF, willing to fail. And you talk so much there about the difference between making a living and making a life. And your goal of putting out this book, as you just shared, was for everyone else. And I know you agreed to come on here and share your story with everyone because you want to have everyone enjoy their life of an entrepreneur or an executive leader and build something meaningful. And I just want to, from the bottom of my heart, and I know from everybody on the call, thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for inspiring a lot of us to go make changes and shifts in the organization. And everything you laid down was just fantastic. And I know a lot of people will take this and put it back in their business. And if they don't, Brian, they're crazy because they should. So thank you. Any final words you want to share here before I send us in the next steps?
Yeah, I mean, two things maybe. One is if anyone ever we talked about painted picture. If anyone ever wants to see what our painted picture looks like, just go to social media and DM me and just say, you know, can I see your painted picture, please? And we'll make sure we send you one. The second one is we are launching a new book, which you mentioned, BYOB, Build Your Own Business, Be Your Own Boss. It isn't just for someone who hasn't yet started a business, which I know all of you have. I love feedback. And because it's a new book, we moved the book down to 99 cents on Amazon until the end of this month. If you are someone that likes to read things and share a couple of comments on feedback, I'd love to hear what you have to say. We lose money at 99 cents. That's the lowest we could change it. But if anyone wants to download that book, I'd love to hear what you think. And I'm always learning. So it's been great being here, Casey, because I see so many amazing comments from people and so much it's reflection into my story and what's worked and what hasn't and why I do what I do. So it's been a lot of fun.
Well, Brian, we appreciate it. And again, everybody go check out BYOB for 99 cents. That's absolutely a steal to get a book. So thanks for sharing that little tidbit, and we'll try to get some feedback your way.